In the manosphere, as it's called, there's trends all around the fact that empathy is a bad thing. We should be not empathetic, that is, again, that is a weakness, that is a vulnerability, like showing our emotions and tears, which is absolutely not the case. Empathy is our superpower as humans, and this is doing so much damage. And I can't fathom what the commercial, power hungry intentions behind those who are spreading this message are. But it's really dangerous.
Hey, I'm Tanya Wilkinson, and this is Death on the Daily, bringing the conversation about death out of the shadows and into the mainstream. Because along with birth and change, if there's one thing that's going to happen to us all, then death is it. And we're going to explore how death actually shows up for us on the daily in a multitude of ways, and how when we allow ourselves to accept and to be with death, how it can teach us a whole heap about how to live this life well.
How many times in your life have you been told, oh, no, don't cry? Or if you're a man or a boy, boys don't cry. How many times have you felt like you have to pull those tears back, push them down? For me, it's something that I'm still journeying with, to stop myself from suppressing myself and my emotions. It's definitely something that was conditioned into me from being really young. It flows through my family, and there is no blame there, because the reality is it flows through our culture. It flows through every aspect of our systems. It flows through our experience at school. It flows through our friendship groups. It really runs deep. And in today's episode of Death on the Daily, where I really wanted to root us into was why it's okay. It's more than okay, actually. It's good. It's beneficial. It's healing to express our emotions. And the reason that this feels really urgent to me is having watched Netflix's Adolescence on the weekend. And my husband and I were talking about the manosphere and the toxic culture that is being created through social media influencers like Andrew Tate, through forums, through websites, through podcasts that are telling boys and young men that it's a weakness to show empathy. It's a weakness to show your emotions. It's a weakness to show any sort of vulnerability, which isn't the case. And obviously, adolescence is really, really rooted in a lot of different causation that builds up into the reason. If you haven't seen the episode, there'll be no spoilers here. Don't worry. But what I can share is that the episode is, and this is not a spoiler, I promise, before you go, no. The episode is about a boy called Jamie who's 13 years old, and he's got a lovely family. Seems like a really stable family base. Obviously, nobody's perfect, but he's got real loving parents. He's got a loving sister. He seems to have a good friendship group. But then he goes and he murders someone at his school. And this 4-part series is founded on real life cases where male rage, where toxic masculinity that is perpetuated through those online forums, through social media, through influencers, even through politicians who are platforming these influencers. It really does shine a spotlight on an urgent need within our society and our culture to change. And for me, where I want to come at this topic is really rooted in our emotions, and in the fact that we are taught, not just from the age at which we can go on social media, but from the time at which we're babies in arms, or even when we're babies in wombs, we are taught suppress, don't show emotions. If you think about the phrase, boys don't cry, or man up, that call to quote unquote be strong, because what if you cry, if you show emotions, if you say you're fearful, you say you're sad, you say you're in pain, you say you're hurting, somehow in our society, that has been labeled as a weakness, which is absolutely incorrect. So let's talk about it. And the reason that this feels really urgent for me is because no, the kids really aren't all right. And when I think about my life, and actually my husband and I, we were just talking about this after watching Adolescence. We were saying that we feel really lucky that we were the last generation. I'm 39 now. We were probably I think we were the last generation that had some of our childhood that was, actually, it was the majority of our childhood that didn't have any internet. I remember the internet coming in when I was a teenager, I think. And back then it was sort of dial-up internet. So you also had to fight with my mum over like her wanting to call family and friends, and me wanting to be on the internet and on MSN Messenger. But also social media. I mean, MSN Messenger was there, but social media by way of Facebook, that didn't come in until I was in university. So we were saying how lucky we were that we actually had a childhood without that influence. The reality is the generation after me and all of the generations since are what they call digital natives. They have only known an existence of the internet, of smartphones, of social media. And there is so much toxicity there. And what I can really connect into is the fact that if I know that I suppress emotions, that was conditioned into me through that perspective in our society. Well, no, that rush to suppress, don't cry. Let's push those emotions down. If you compound that with the numbing and then also these dangerous spaces on social media, there's a really, really urgent need for all of us to act. So that's what I want to talk about today, because I also believe that there is agency that we each have where we can embody that change that we need to see in this world. So let's talk about what happens when we're told to suppress, to punch down our emotions. And before we do this, I just wanted to share a conversation from a UK radio station called LBC recently, which was inspired by Adolescence. And this father on the show with Sheila Fogarty really does show just how prevalent this issue is in society. And I have to say that I know it's easy to judge people in this space. I come with no judgment because I understand that that father has had that passed down to him from his family and from his ancestral line, probably going quite a few generations back. So let's watch it together.
About it's okay, boys crying. You've said that so many times.
Yes, it is okay.
It's okay, boys crying.
It is okay.
Boys don't. Nobody needs to cry. Crying is actually not a good thing.
Dear, you've taken a shed to pieces recently.
But
Richard,
Sheila, that's true though.
Richard,
if my boy is crying, okay, I'm not gonna go up to him and start saying, "Oh, you're stupid for crying." No, I'm gonna try and find out why you're crying. But if he's crying because of something silly that happened in school, I would say, "Look, it's nothing. Just it's fine. Get over it."
When boys are discouraged from crying, it denies them an outlet to process how they're really feeling. What this does is it suppresses the true emotion and the true feeling. And when it comes to, I mean, that dad there was talking about things that are supposedly nothing in school. But obviously, if a boy, any child, is feeling it, then it's valid and it should absolutely be encouraged. And the thing is, suppressing these feelings, punching them down, telling someone don't cry, it doesn't get rid of these feelings. It actually pushes them down. It creates all of these layers that are just bubbling under the surface. And this leads to unresolved emotions that can erupt later and can erupt seemingly randomly without us understanding where they come from. And this podcast is obviously about death. We talk a lot about grief. And for me, one thing that I'm really, really conscious of is how much suppressed grief that there is in society. How many of us were told that you should be over this by now. Push it down, push those emotions. Or how many of us have sat at funerals, which I definitely had when I was a teenager, and blinked back my tears because I felt so exposed when it came to me showing my vulnerability and to me crying. I, for some reason, felt really, really ashamed. And research has shown that unexpressed emotions contribute to mental and physical health issues, be it anxiety, be it depression, be it digestive issues, be it heart disease. There is so much that it can impact, as well as in that emotional state by way of anger that might just randomly erupt. And we have no idea what the rooting of this is because it's some grief or some pain, emotional pain that we've just buried. And if we can encourage crying, if we can encourage maybe, for some people as well, where you've suppressed crying, I appreciate it's not as easy to say, let's just turn that tap back on. But even just talking about it can help to open up those gates very slowly so that eventually then those tears can come. And crying is really, really powerful. It's cathartic. When we have a cry, how we feel better afterwards? There's a reason for that because tears contain hormones and endorphins. So actually, it's a really, really natural way for us to be able to process those emotions, to sit with them, to let them out, and ultimately to help us to regulate our nervous system and to get that endorphin boost that can help us to move forwards through whatever we're going through. So as we just spoken about, expressing our emotions and in particular allowing those tears to flow as and when they need to are good. So what can we each do about it? Now, for me, this is where it comes down to each of us being that embodiment of that which we urgently need to see in this world. Through how we show up in this world, as well as the space that we hold for others, we can each really show, whether it's boys, whether it's any child, whether it's friends, family at any age, we can teach others that it's okay. And it's not just okay, it's good, it's beneficial. It's one of the best things that you can do to allow those emotions to flow, to be self-aware of ourselves and how we're really, really feeling and how that can really boost us and build our own resilience. And this area is so profound because actually when we teach boys in particular, but more widely, everyone in society who needs to hear this message that emotions are normal, what we're doing is we're helping to dismantle systems that are truly harmful and impacting all of our health and our well-being. This work for me is deeply ancestral. And this is why I love having conversations about death and grief, because the more that we can have these conversations, the more that we can inspire others to open up and to perhaps speak to loved ones when they really, truly need it. And I really do believe that this work saves lives. So we've spoken about what's going on. Now let's talk about what we can each do, because I really believe, this is urgent and we all need to be on this mission together. And I think when it comes to systems, algorithms that are built to fuel hate and division and to take our boys and young men down a rabbit hole of toxic masculinity, of misogyny. And I often get stuck in a place where I'm like, oh my God, how do we get out of here? And obviously there's stuff that we can do by way of demanding change in our systems, but also there's individual agency that we can each do. So I wanted to share this clip from Stephen Graham, who stars in Adolescence as well as being the co-writer of it. And I think this really sums up the urgent stuff that we need to do right now.
Look, you know yourself, when you go to a restaurant sometimes, and no disrespect, I understand it, but kids are sat there talk to each other, ask each other what's going on. That's the only way we can understand what's happening. Adolescence is such a difficult age. Your brain's forming, your chemicals are all over the place. You're learning about yourself. You're trying to construct this character that's going to take you into the future. So let's talk. Let's open the bridges of communication with each other. That's all we're trying to do.
Open the bridges of communication together. That feels to me like something that we can all do. And actually, if every single human on this planet, opened those bridges of communication and we held space for each other and we allowed ourselves to express our emotions, this whole world would be completely different. But within our own little orbit of life, we can each create our own ripple effect through how we hold that space for others. So first up, in what can we do? We've got encouraging emotional expression. How can you, with whether it's those who you love, those who you are friends with, those who you engage with at work or whatever it is, how can you inspire others to talk about their feelings, to cry when they need to? How can you help to show that emotions are normal and to break this cycle? And I'm definitely someone who's still on a journey of opening up and crying. I mean, in episode 1 of this podcast, I did cry, but that didn't come naturally to me. In truth, I'm not someone who it just pours out quite. I mean, in some spaces and with some friends, definitely, always. But I still find myself fighting back tears. And I understand that that is rooted in me, in my family, in my upbringing, in the society, in culture, in the education systems that I went through. So I can see myself with that compassionate lens, but I also see where there's urgent work that needs to be done. So for me, it's really about shining a spotlight on myself. Where am I suppressing and how can I be more authentic? And through that, how can I have authentic conversations with others that give them permission to open up themselves? How can I ask a question to say, how are you feeling today? And perhaps if they've asked me, how am I today before that? And I've opened up and says, truly, I'm not great today, actually. I'm feeling a bit down. I'm feeling quite anxious. The grief is here. I've been really sad. That can then open others up as well to see, okay, it's safe to share. I don't just have to reply with the textbook. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. And you? I suppose with what I just shared in mind, really emphasize that actually for some people, it's going to take a journey to encourage them to open up. And I completely understand. If that's you, or if that's someone who you love, whether it's a child, other family members, friends, etc., just make that commitment to take it step by step. And as we saw in Adolescence, where Ashley Walters, and again, this isn't a big spoiler, but where he says to his son, do you want to go for some chips? And that was a beautiful moment where he realized, actually, I need to be having conversations with my son. And I think that is that invitation that maybe if the person who you loved, be it your child, be it your teenager, be it your partner, whoever else, if they don't open up easily, then maybe going for a meal, going for their favorite food, playing some sports or other things that are activity based can be wonderful ways to really cultivate that connection and conversation, particularly if it's moments where you do it with the mobile phone completely switched off. And then second up, we've got remembering our ripple effect. And remembering our ripple effect is really about remembering that our individual interactions, literally one by one, how we move through the world, how we even interact with people when we are at a till in shops or when we see someone who's in distress, maybe on the train or in the streets, where we show up with kindness and compassion, that really does make a difference. And I believe that in a world where it's so built right now on individualism, where it's moved us away from community care and connection, we've really forgotten the essence of us as humans, which is deeply connected and deeply empathetic beings. And in the manosphere, as it's called, I was talking with my husband and he said that actually he's read about and I think seen some videos about the fact that there's trends all around the fact that empathy is a bad thing. We should be not empathetic, that is, again, that is a weakness, that is a vulnerability, like showing our emotions and tears, which is absolutely not the case. Empathy is our superpower as humans, and this is doing so much damage. And I can't fathom what the commercial, power hungry intentions behind those who are spreading this message are. But it's really dangerous. But that's where, for me, I believe that the more of us that can show up in kindness, in compassion, in beautiful connection and care for each other, if you think about those people who are sort of those with those hard shells, I'm sure, I mean, I've had lots of people actually who I've worked with where it's taken a bit of kindness, a bit of just continuing to show up, and then eventually that shell breaks and you realize that there's a really lovely person on the underside of that. And I believe all of us, we've all got that heart that's beating within us. So how we can show up, how we can role model, how we can be that change in the world, I believe that there is a really powerful ripple effect. And in a world where people are being told, don't be emotional, don't be compassionate, don't be empathetic, we can really, really be that tonic and that antidote. And I believe through those ripple effects, we will never have any idea of how many people that we influence, but I know that those ripple effects can be significant. So third up, we've got teaching emotional hygiene. Now, if you think of emotional hygiene, I want you to think of it a bit like our hygiene when it comes to our body is having showers, is brushing our teeth, having those daily routines where we look after our hygiene, we look after a hygiene from from the perspective, I guess, not stinking, but also there's obviously the health side of it that comes in. Hygiene is crucial, much like you might have heard people speaking about sleep hygiene. So emotional hygiene teaches us to take care of our feelings and our emotions just in the same way as we have those daily practices elsewhere. And this is something where, again, we can embody that change. We can practice good emotional hygiene on the daily. But also, I believe that's where we can help to influence others, be it our kids, be it our partner, be it our friends, by way of practices where we can bring things into conversations like little check-ins of, how are you feeling? I know you've been through a really, really tough time. Do you want to talk about it? Opening up that space. I'm here, I'm listening, or just those check-ins. You might not want to talk, but just know that I'm here, I'm thinking about you, and I'm always a listening ear if you need it. And I believe that the more that we talk, whether that's with ourselves, with each other, the more that emotional hygiene just becomes the norm. And I really do feel that this is such a crucial area, not just for, I guess, us within our family groups or our friendship groups, but also I believe that emotional hygiene is absolutely crucial when we think about our education systems and also when we think about work, when we think about corporates, offices, small businesses, etc. The power when we have people, whether it's in leadership roles or any other roles, who are educated when it comes to emotional hygiene. So this is an area that I'm really passionate about. And it's one actually where I've started doing grief workshops in corporates and for charities. And I recently did one where I sat in circle with 45 people, and it was so, so powerful, just bringing people together. And the feedback was, I didn't know that spaces like this existed where I could share like this. And it really got me thinking about that urgency. Actually, this workshop was for a corporate audience. It was people who came from an industry. And across that industry, it made me think about all of those 45 people and the fact that they are each in organizations where maybe there are conversations that they aren't able to speak out loud. And obviously, the impact that can have on us when it's compounded through our work, through our friendship groups, through our family groups, where people just aren't able to speak about it. So here's some practices that you can do on the emotional hygiene side. So first up, we've got hand to heart or belly and having a daily check-in with yourself. This is really, really simple. Just put your hand to your heart, put your hand to your belly. And just connect in. If it's comfortable to do so, you could always close down your eyes or just leave your gaze, just gazing around to the horizon as you connect inwards. Taking a deep breath, again, if that's comfortable for you. For some people, it might not be. And just connecting into wherever you've placed your hand, whether that's heart or belly. That feeling of touch can bring a sense of care, a sense of connection where perhaps you've been feeling disconnected. With your hand to your heart or your hand to your belly, all you're going to do is just ask yourself, how am I feeling today? And see if you can answer that with absolute truth, knowing that this is a judgment-free zone. Whatever is, just is. And actually, it's healthy and it's good if you express it. So this is a practice that you can do daily. It's really, really simple. It can take seconds, even on the busiest of days. And it's one that I would encourage as well that you should do with your family, with your friends, as well as if you're sitting with someone who is really hurting. just saying to them, should we just take a few breaths together? Just put your hand to your heart or put your hand to your belly, whatever feels good for you. Let's just take some breaths, feel that connection, go inwards. And then obviously you can ask those questions to explore how they're feeling. And then next up, I also wanted to share when it comes to emotional hygiene, there's that acknowledgement that for many of us, it's going to be a journey to open up. So if you or someone who you love or someone who you're supporting can't speak to or in any way express how they're really feeling, there are other avenues that you can go down. One of them being, could they draw it? Could they write it to themselves? Even if they write it to themselves and then rip it into shreds or chuck that note into obviously a safe fire. Doing it in a safe way, obviously, always. But also another thing that I remember doing this in my teens, and I've spoken about this with clients who I've supported in their grief, that can be really cathartic when we're like, I feel the emotions there, but I just I can't get them out. I can't get these tears out. They're not flowing. Is to put a song on. Songs can be really powerful connectors, whether that's your favorite song, whether that's your favorite sad song, something where maybe you might like to move to it, dance to it, where you might like to jump around to it, where you might like to sing your heart out to it. And if I think about in my teens, this brings me to obviously the classic teenage breakup moments. I think I was at uni actually, so I don't know if I was just post my teens. Don't know. I need to check what year the Foo Fighters album came out. But the Foos, The Best of You, was my song when I went through an absolutely massive, the first time that my heart had truly been broken, breakup. And I remember just how cathartic that was, singing that song, dancing, making a lot of noise, and just letting those tears flow. So know that there are channels, there are ways to get it out. If sitting and speaking doesn't feel like something that you can access right now, know that this is a journey. And always, always, as I always say, treat yourself with heaps of grace and compassion, particularly when you're going through grief and you're going through difficult times. And then bringing this into very much the grief space, into my heartland as well, I really wanted to speak to the power when we can allow ourselves and others to continue to touch our grief. It's something that I am so deeply grateful to my husband, Jordan, to my dear friend, Eva, my dear friend, Christiana, to my cousin, Kira, as well as other people, my friend, Kelly, who have opened up space for me to be able to really freely speak about my grief, to be able to touch it, to speak Ngako Rayona, my daughter, who tragically died halfway through pregnancy, to be able to speak her name, to be able to voice those beautiful memories, as well as to voice that which I so wish with all of my heart and my soul and every breath until I die, that she was here to experience with me. So how can you and your loved ones touch grief and that which is painful and difficult? Maybe it is connecting into memories, creating that channel for that conversation to say, hey, we haven't spoken about Dad in a while. What memories are coming up that you feel bring a lot of joy or a lot of love to you right now? Or like I shared, sharing all of those wants that are so valid. I wish they were here with me on my birthday. There's an empty seat at the table this Christmas. How I wish that they were here. And I remember them last Christmas smiling and laughing and doing something that we all found hilarious, or whatever it is. Creating these conversations can give us that outlet. And if we can see that actually we can hold these beautiful memories, we can hold joy alongside tears and sadness. Sometimes, and oftentimes, what I've found is that when I haven't been able to cry, those are the ways that I've been able to just gently touch my grief and to access that well of emotions and just to let those tears flow. So as we close out this episode of Death on the Daily, I wanted to share just this urgent message for us all. How can we each embody that emotional connection, embody the fact that it's okay to not be okay? In fact, it's good to express those emotions that can feel difficult and that can feel painful. It's okay to be grieving. It's okay for grief to be a lifelong journey. And it's definitely, definitely okay for boys and all of us to cry. So I close out every episode with my note to self. And the reason that my note to self came about actually was through my grief journaling. As I navigated the forwards path after the diagnosis that we received that told us that our darling daughter, Ngako Raiona, had a birth defect that meant that she couldn't exist for more than 36 hours after birth if she survived that long. I really rooted into my journaling as a way for me to just be real with myself. And my notes to self were little notes that I wrote that were just future facing, reminding me of things that in moments where I felt absolute clarity, I knew that I could come back to them. So at the end of every episode, I ask my guests when I do the interviews, what's a note to self that you would like to give to a past version of yourself? And I end each of these episodes with a note to self, whether that's for a past self, whether that's for myself now, or whether that's for my future self. And this is a note to self that is very relevant for me at every single point in my life, including in my forwards path. Because like I shared, I am still in a process of unlearning the toxic stereotypes and labels that we give to our emotions, to showing vulnerability. So my note to self is this, and you can join me with this commitment if you wish. Tear by tear, when I let myself cry and express how I'm really feeling, and I open up the space for others to do the same. I help myself, I help others, and I help our world to heal. So that is my note to self. That is my urgent message that I just want to share with this world. It's okay to cry. And I want us all to take that forwards. And so we close out this episode with the reminder that I always share at the end, which is just go forwards with grace, go forwards with compassion, go forwards with love, go forwards with empathy. And know that wherever you are in your journey, I'm sending you lots and lots of love.
All of my gratitude to you for joining me for another Dead Conversation. Death on the Daily is edited by David Strutt. The music is Set Free by Katie Gray. And I am Tanya Wilkinson. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be over the moon if you can rate, review, and subscribe. It really, really helps me to get the word out there. And if you want to say hi or to hear more about my work as a coach and death doula, including how I support my clients to navigate their death on the daily, then all of the ways that you can connect with me are in the show notes. I'll be back soon with some more Dead Conversations. And in the meantime, take good care of yourself and others.
There's a cold fire, there's a crossfire, and there's something inside, and we'll never make it, and we'll never break